Hello and welcome to Crystal Core Radio, episode 85. Joining me today is a legend, somebody we have had long been needing to get on the podcast for a while. Syncweaver is joining the podcast today to talk about the cash shop in Final Fantasy XIV, the state of level sync in Final Fantasy XIV, which originated from a tweet that he sent out just a couple days ago. And before we dive into all that, we'll just sit down and get to know Syncweaver here a little bit. His links will all be in the description of these videos. You can also listen to the MP3 version of the podcast day and date as soon as we're done live streaming and filming it, just because of a generous donation from Luke. Luke gave a huge tip and allowed me to do a lot with the podcast. So he basically sponsored the podcast for the next year, is what I told him, based off his generosity and allowing me the freedom that you can now subscribe to Crystal Core and Epic Blue Radio separately wherever podcasts are found. So you like podcasts on Spotify, we're there. You like them on Apple, we're there. You like them on TuneIn, Alexa, we're there. You like them on your Samsung fridge, guess what? We're there. So everywhere a podcast can be found, just search either Crystal Core Radio or Epic Blue Radio and hit that subscribe button and give us a review if you like the audio. Also, special thanks to WG Productions and Keelan for hitting that join button over on Ginger Gaming Radio, helping to support the podcast long term. Ideally, I don't want to have to do subscription or kind of like funding drives. The podcast is the most expensive form of product that we have, which is great that I've always just done it and just kind of I eat the cost, but you guys have stepped up and make that burden a little lighter. So thank you guys. You are our official podcast sponsors as well. So all that intro being done and complete, Syncweaver, introduce yourself to the world. You just crossed over 7K subscribers here on YouTube. You played Final Fantasy XIV, and for some unknown reason to me, you went and played World of Warcraft because you felt like you owed it, or there's some curiosity that you had there, and that experience has enlightened you in many ways as to how Final Fantasy XIV is officially better than World of Warcraft in many ways. Sync, why don't you say hi, tell people where they can find you, and tell them about yourself.
How y'all doing? My name is Syncweaver, and I am a Final Fantasy XIV player, which is an intro that I'm going to be doing for every video I ever make from now on. The reminder for that is because now, WoW people are watching me, and I usually, and if anything, my channel is basically lore on Final Fantasy XIV lore, discussions on Final Fantasy, on anything that props up in the community, honestly. And I typically try to make fun little, I would say, entertaining little videos. I talk about the jobs. I talk about whether or not Heidelin is going to be fighting us in Walker or not. Theories. I've actually talked about Shinryu and Omega and how they're not actually from the 14th world, and they're from somewhere else. So I do a lot of that. But as of recently, like Brian said, I went into another world, and
Warcraft.
I owed it to the people who were coming to us and to our game. I wanted to know where they were coming from, and I thought that would be fair. There have been some negativity against World of Warcraft and their people, and I say, look, they're about to be our people too. They're our friends, but we can't judge them. I thought it would be fair. Go over there and check it out. Little did I know that I would go through 3 mind explosions, about 20 cups of coffee, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of lore, and me clicking a cancel subscription button for the first time in my life. But it was quite an adventure. And oh boy, do I have a lot to say about it.
What would you say? Just kind of the high level. You said something on Twitter that was really interesting, talking about how there was a certain part of the story where you just were like, that's it. It was literally felt like your tweet. The feeling I got from reading it was this was some kind of last straw, that essentially the experience was generally positive up to that point, and then there was no justification for sticking with the game from that point forward. Why don't you give us an overview of that situation and why that was so critical?
So my original tweet said, after going through hundreds of hours of WoW lore, I've come to the consensus that I don't give an F. The story is diffused. I can't, as a new player, get into it, which means I'm done. It was so good until it wasn't, until they jabbed a big sword into the planet. And I think that's where WoW refugees and other WoW fanatics found that the story started going bad as well. When the story at the end of the expansion called Legion, they shoved the sword into the planet. I thought that was like the end of World of Warcraft, and they would probably work on World of Warcraft 2. But then they came out with Battle for Azeroth, which totally had nothing to do with the sword. They left that in the background. They started talking about some I guess she's a banshee, Sylvanas, but I didn't know who Sylvanas was. I didn't know anybody who was the core cast. They didn't tell me because I was a new player, and I had to go find out through friends, through outside sources, and all that. I just couldn't take it anymore because they were telling me to go read these books, read these short stories, watch these short videos. I didn't have time for that.
Were those books charging you money? Like, were
Oh,
these, were they a part of your public library where you could just go check them out for free?
Oh, no. I wish I knew where I can get the physical copies of these books, but you can't. You can't buy the physical copies. You can only buy the digital versions, and even the digital versions are a little too expensive for what they are, even though they are years old. Some of them are a decade old. Some of them are 5 years old. They're way too expensive for what they are, and I think Pyromancer missed that fact, too, when he said he was done with 14.
Did you see his latest wall? He put up a whole new wall. Black Mage and Maelstrom. So mine is a point for Maelstrom, but at the end of the day, I was like, Black Mage, all right. I love it. I love it.
I think it was kind of cathartic for him because I looked at that wall and the wall that he had before. It was a lot cleaner. It was very simple. It had probably one of the best Black Mage picture photos I've ever seen. It looked like a cute little VV from Final Fantasy IX. And you know what? I felt what Pyro felt when he, if anybody haven't seen that, you should actually see his rant. Anybody who hasn't seen Pyro's rant.
Dude, it made me cry.
I was going to say something about it, but I think I would have been angry. You were more empathetic. I'll give you that. Thank you for being more empathetic. But me, I think I would have ranted about it.
I don't think I'm naturally an empathetic person. I think that somebody goes Brian's an empath. And it's it's something I have to actively train. And I think I've maybe become more empathetic over time. But generally, I never would have described myself as somebody who is empathetic naturally. My wife is very empathetic naturally. And for me, I'm just it's something I have to practice and work on. But I was just watching his video and it just hit me like a ton of bricks, putting myself in his position. Imagine if this was the Square Enix news. Imagine if it's oh my gosh, Yoshi P, he turns out he's a monster. And I don't get that feeling at all. Somebody coming into this in the last 5 seconds, I apologize. No, I'm just putting myself into Pyro's shoes, of which is I have this great love of this game. I pour a lot of my free time into it. And then all of a sudden, it's actually what his video kind of gets to is that it really wasn't all of a sudden. It's this dread, this anxiety, this frustration that he's continued to have build up. And then instead of just going and saying, this isn't worth my time anymore, they've jumped the shark. It's something that is so humanity, horrendous. The accusations and the investigations. And obviously there is some truth to what that was going on. And the fact for me, it's the thing that hurt me the most out of that whole situation was the picture of the guys with Bill Cosby in their Cosby suite. I was a huge Bill Cosby fan. I grew up. I had all of his albums, and it's I have no words, in that regards. And so for me, I was sucked the air out of the room. And so seeing Pyro, it's it wasn't somebody who was, it felt like somebody who was probably on that journey. And it was just a couple, a couple more expansions to where it's what am I doing? But at the same time, it's why am I doing this? Why am I still giving them that? They've already spent all my trust in them prior to this. And this isn't something that makes it even more palatable.
Yeah, no, it felt I think he felt more of a gigantic stab in the back for how much he spent to Blizzard, how much time he went into his content, how much of his earned time that he wasted on them talking about the lore. Then he has to go back and renege on that because they changed the lore in some book that nobody has ever heard of or seen before. And then he has to, debacle with people on Twitter, on social media, saying like, no, this is how it goes, this is how it is, this is canon now. And him going back and forth and saying like, you know what, I just can't take it anymore. I'm going somewhere else. And seeing him rip that photo off the wall, and he's like, it's not even worth it. Like I felt angry. I mean, I feel
anger, I think, is an appropriate response. Yeah.
I like not angry like towards like the action or anything, but like they basically wasted his time. They basically used up all of Pyro's good nature. And he did so much. He white knighted for Blizzard. Honestly, he white knighted. I'm not going to say anything about his white knighting and what he did, but I'm going to say that he was a full-on fan of Blizzard.
Yeah,
and him ripping, like I said, that moment where he took the picture off the wall, and then the next thing I see is him with Final Fantasy on the wall. I was like,
good, this has him.
Like, I think that has to be cathartic. Like,
it's got to be. It's got to be, because guess what? Like, here, 1 second. Stall for time.
Okay. What I will say is that the way his story goes with the lore in WoW, mine felt kind of similar, but not to that extent. By far, no, not to that extent. Yeah. I just felt like they were sending me into a fun little fun house, but they were changing the mirrors on me while going through it so I can spend longer time in that fun house. And then I'm getting frustrated and even more frustrated before they're just like, here's the exit, here you go. But it's $30.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? What's going on?
I stalled because it's like, literally, here's my lore book. And I have one. I want to get the second one. Julie was going to, I think, get it for Christmas, but they were sold out or something like that. And I love this thing. I like to kind of sit back and just kind of like page through it every now and then. I really love the lore and the story of Final Fantasy 14. I don't think this is required to understand the story in 14. Like, no, it's not. This just gives me like a little bit of like, it helps when we're like talking theory and I'm listening to Ethos or I'm listening to Anonymous or what have you. But this I don't feel is required. It's like it's really good information. There's some errors in it, and it's like they acknowledge those errors, and then I like how they write in that it's like, well, that's the perception of the person at the time, and what have you. But it's at least they acknowledge it, they talk about it, and and it's something that can be continued to evolve and be discussed in the long run. And so I have an appreciation for the lore book, but I like the story and I don't need the lore book to enjoy the story. And the fact that I got from that whole thing with Pyromancer, and because I'm not aware of it, like, again, I tried WoW and it was awful. I stand by that. And for whatever reason, that video right now is blowing up and it has 2 comments that are pretty much the theme. Hey, this video aged like wine. And the other one is, this is a guy that's just hopping on some kind of trend and bashing on WoW. And I was like, check the date. I published this months ago. And I thought like no one was going to care. I was like, nobody cares about Brian's WoW opinion. And then all of a sudden, apparently people care about it. And it's like, okay, I just have to remind the people who are still like, WoW is great and they will always be great. I'm like, I'm sorry. A, it's not. But also B, that like and somebody's like, why does your opinion even matter? It's like, I represent a life into this game, and that's not what I see happening. I could be wrong. There could be this entire sect of WoW noobs every day, like, oh, I've heard about this game and I finally decided to play it after 17 years. I finally made that spot in my that filled that hole in my day. Now I can put in some WoW time. It's like, okay, I just don't see that person even existing in the long run.
So like I think the only people that are left are super nostalgic or they're stuck. They don't play video games. They play World of Warcraft, which nothing against them. I have nothing against them, and I'm not trying to rag on them. They just can't let go. And yeah. I think that's just maybe it's an emotional thing. Maybe it's a psychological thing, but it almost seems like they're afraid to try something new, which is the reason why sometimes we get some people like commenting on your videos or my videos saying, look at this shill trying to talk up Final Fantasy,
Yeah.
has no idea what he's talking about. Now, I could say, yeah, I could talk about it because I was there. And I tried it. I went.
I gave it the college try and dropped out. So it's like I think I made it to like 56 and through this Shadowlands. I was just like, All right, so I think that was our getting to know Sync and bashing on WoW segment of the podcast, guys. Thanks so much for being here. I'm going to transition into Final Fantasy XIV's cash shop. Let's set the context, and then I'm going to show you guys some data. And we'll discuss it, get Sync's opinion on this. Final Fantasy XIV has had a cash shop. It was introduced in Heaven's Word. It is something that's completely optional. It also sits outside of the game. You have to go through the launcher to get to it. It isn't something while you're playing the game running around and you see a mount and then you see an ad that says, hey, swipe your credit card and you can also have this mount. So there is a separation where Final Fantasy XIV does it. The other thing I'm going to say at the top of this is that Final Fantasy XIV is in a really good state. I think overall, when your game is performing well and you're enjoying it, there's a easy way to kind of excuse a cash shop, because I don't like cash shops. I've said this in numerous videos, but in and of itself is a huge but. The idea that it's going to go away is ludicrous, and that's some of the things that we're going to kind of talk about here today. So that all being said, I think there are some clear differences. I think people can do it right and can do it wrong. And I'm very curious as to getting Sync's opinions, because with Cruise Chaser being introduced as a cash mount this last week, it really has frustrated a lot of people. And I'm seeing a theme. And so let me bring in our numbers here. I added this. I asked the question two different ways for the game. And so we're going to go through both of them. But here we go. I typically see these fall into 1 to 3 categories. That they're indifferent, as long as it's not pay to win or pay for power. Cash shops are horrible, or MTX is horrible. And cash shops give me a way to support the game. So they actually like cash shops because people can go above and beyond and support the game that they love financially. And so those are the kind of, I wanted to have the first question broken up into 3 categories. So, Sync, does anything stand out to you in terms of the results that we're seeing with this poll right now?
There's a lot of people who don't seem to care all too much, as long as it's not pay to win. And I think I'm somewhere in that camp. I think I'm a little bit indifferent, but that's a huge metric there. I didn't expect a lot of people to just not care, which kind of shows something there.
I can even refresh, because I've had this kind of not refreshed for a while. So
yeah,
another 2K votes have come in. All right, so yeah, we're that's the metric. And I post these polls over on Gender Prime and Work to Game, so I post it 2 different ways. So indifferent, that's where you'd say you fall with 75% of the community.
Yeah, I feel kind of in the middle. I don't think it's going to ruin the game, but at the same time, I'm not like really for cash shop. If there's like an extra mount in there, I would rather a mount be a reward within the game. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if you have something that is supporting the game, like the cash shop, which Yoshi P actually said before while standing on stage and talking about the cash shop, and it's an older video, I think, but he said that the cash shop is for supporting the game, like perhaps getting a new server, or if there's like animation changes or any fixes in there. That's what he said. There's going to be no pay to win. That's what he said. And I appreciated that. So I didn't mind the cash shop. I didn't mind it at all. I honestly went on the cash shop a few times to get like there's a, can I say the character Emmett Selk? Can I without
sure. Without say his
spoiling
name.
Without
Do
spoiling
not speak
anything.
his name. Knave. Sorry.
Emmett Selk has an emote where he snaps like above his head, and he just conjures things, right? That emote is also in the cash shop for a couple of dollars, for like maybe $5 at most. I don't remember. I got that emote as soon as it came out, and my character now snaps. That doesn't change the game. It doesn't change the economy of the game. It has not powered me up or nothing. It gave me an emote, and you snap for a few dollars. I don't see anything bad with that, but at the same time, would have been good for it to be a reward in game. Sure, it would have been great, but it's only a couple dollars in the shop. I didn't see it as that egregious. It didn't change nothing. I got it. I got a snap.
You're also an adult, and it's your money,
Right?
You know, in that regards. And it seems that is there going to be an MMO or any game that's going to launch without a cash shop? I can only think of one, and I don't know if that's going to be anything special.
I don't even know an MMO without a cash shop, to be honest. Man, I can't think of one. I think the cash shop kind of it's become synonymous to MMOs at this point for me, but no, I don't. Do you know one?
Immortal Online 2 supposedly going to be launching with a subscription and no cash shop, and that's what they've somewhat promised or whatever. I say let's see what happens after a year or two. If they can build a game and a community, that would be great. That would be, I think, the exception to the rule. And I don't want to sit here and excuse it. I just wanted to kind of highlight this in terms of the numbers. 75% indifferent, 16% saying the cash shop eventually ruins games. What do you think about that category?
I don't think it's going to do anything really. The cash shop for Final Fantasy and how they're doing it is not like how, if I can give an example, not like how WoW does it, where they have not only something called a WoW token. And if you don't know what a WoW token is, a WoW token, you can trade that in for actual in-game money. And that in-game money is being abused in certain ways, like bots or power boosting and grinding. But as long as that's not in the 14 shop, no, I don't think it's going to ruin anything at all.
And what about the last category? Cash gives a way to support the game and the devs. 9% of people weighing in on that category.
I think more power to them for saying that, because I wouldn't go out of my way to fully support the cash shop, but it as long as they keep up with that notion, with that promise, because we don't know where that money is actually going. As long as all it's doing is giving us certain rewards that perhaps people are interested in, and that money goes towards the game, then I think they're viable for what they say. Cash shops gives me a way to support the game, and it's their money. They can do that.
You know what was surprising from this poll for me?
Which one?
I was thinking the poll was going to be 80-10-10. I thought 80% was going to say indifferent. I thought the cash shop eventually ruins games was going to come in at 10%, and the cash shop supporting gives would be at 10%. Because no matter what, like whenever we bring this up, I will always see people that fall into that second category. They're very vocal. And one of the things that I was like, well, let's just break it down. Let's just put it out there in terms of pure numbers, and let's see what people have to say about it. And because here's my theory. And I thought, 10% seems about right. 16%, it's, within the ballpark, kind of makes sense. But it's to highlight also, because I've seen also people in this thread alone, like somebody was like, I was really frustrated by the fact that like so many people were voted to this. And so I'm legit. Anyway, like I wish I could highlight some of this stuff and make it easier to find, because we've got a lot of comments on the thread alone. But they were saying like they were frustrated because 75% people are indifferent, and then 9% are finding it's a way. So if you actually combine that, because I've seen people even in chat say like, hey, it's a 1 and a 3 for me. They're like, I'm indifferent, and it also gives me that way, right? You start combining those, you realize how vocal a minority that the anti-MTX and anti-cash shop people are. Which, to me, would say when anybody comes and says there should never be a cash shop in an MMO, which I don't like them. I continue to say, like, it's not my cup of tea. I don't put money towards them. I bought the whale mount, namely because I went to FanFest and got the bike mount for going to FanFest. So in this way was a cheap FanFest ticket. I just kind of budgeted for that, right? I'm a hypocrite. Right. We'll call it like that. But at the core of it, when you factor in that, there is no pathway to not have a cash shop. Like anybody sitting here like saying that the cash shop spending money. All we have to do is starve the cash shop. We just have to starve, the cash shop out. If we don't give it money, then they won't do that, and then they'll put this in the game, and my sub fee will cover it. That isn't what the numbers show. That isn't what it makes sense. And especially when we look at the subscription fee, it isn't anything more than what you could pay. You can optionally pay for additional retainers in Final Fantasy 14, that driving your sub fee up a little bit higher. Final Fantasy 11 had the same category. And I saw Zoe, let's say Final Fantasy 11 doesn't have a cash shop. I'm talking about new games. I'm talking about games that are actively being developed, and we don't know what's happening with 11 next year. And if they announce a full-on remake in Unreal, and then here's the 11 cash shop, it's gonna be like, well, what are you gonna do? It is.
I think they'll take that. They'll take that a little bit negatively if 11 did have a cash shop. It's the same thing as like how classic WoW got a cash shop, but there was no cash shop in the past for original WoW.
But the question then to like 11 community, of which I'm a part of, is like, if you got the game in Unreal and new content and they were supporting it, and like, what is that worth? Like, the thing that I would venture to bet is if the Cruise Chaser had a label that says support for this mount will add servers to EU, we'll add the, I think they would have like theoretically sold out of the Cruise Chaser. It's like, can I buy 5? Like, people are like, oh, we want the EU servers. And like, that's I laugh at that because that's how we got the EU data center. Yeah. We got that from them adding a cash shop and doing that. Now we're getting Oceanic, and it's unfortunate the Oceanic is still not going to be set up until like 6.1 at the earliest. So It's like, sometimes this money is like, like we're still waiting on that. J Frey Gaming says, as long as the in-game achievement items mounts continue to be as high quality as the ones going into the shop, that they personally have no issues. Do you have issue with Cruise Chaser being the mount in question?
Me? I kind of wish that the Cruise Chaser was actually an in-game reward, but
why?
Because it's so cool. It is so cool. It transforms into a literal blade that flies into the air. It's big. It's gigantic. It's a boss that I've spent hours trying to kill and savage. And oh man, it would have been cool if like, hey, I just beat you. Can I ride you through the air? That would have been like a cool thing to have as a reward. People would go back and play Alexander. Like, that thing would be stuffed up. But seeing it as a reward, seeing it like a mount in the cash shop, I'm fine. I'm fine with that. It's $30. I think it's a bit steep. I think it is.
I don't think the price is steep because they also do sales, and we know they do sales. And typically the price is like, if you want it now, here's the price, and then they'll discount it different mounts at different sale times. So if you're worried about the price itself, like, it's in line with everything else in the shop. And so I would just say, like, all right, just wait for a sale. If it's something you want and you just don't want to spend $30 on it, go ahead.
That's a good point. I would say that. Yeah, I believe the whale was on sale. Was it after the FanFest? Because I bought the whale during FanFest.
Yeah, the whale is now, because it's like 42 as an 8-person account wide. So right. Like the tag account wide versus like single, et cetera, like that all has like an impact on the cost of the mount itself.
Right.
So just interesting.
And the mount's not hurting nobody. You can just go in and say, yeah, I got this cool looking mount. I got it from the cash shop, but it's cool looking and I like it. And I spent my money on it. And, all of my characters, my ults can fly on it as well. I think essentially, since it's not harming the game in any kind of way, I don't really have an opinion on the big mount, the big cool looking mount that, honestly, and now you have me thinking about actually debating on buying. Thank you, Brian. I wanted to think about that so much.
Yeah, I'm planning on actually giving it away as some upcoming streams. So be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share if you guys want to have an opportunity. I have no problem like buying and doing gifted, but I don't. I was giving away the whale mount, the 2-seater whale, a couple times. As just like, hey, it supports the game, and then B, etc. Now, that all being said, like, I still don't like cash shops. I think essentially like the monetization structure needs to be reevaluated, because you're buying the game, you're buying the expansions, you're buying subscription time, and now like they're having that additional that additional dip. Now, Final Fantasy 14 is in a good state, makes it a very hard subject. People are going to be like, oh, you just hate the game or something like that. But essentially what we've seen with WoW is that everybody excused this kind of activity until it got to a point where the game wasn't fun. So as long as the game's fun, they're delivering high quality things, Yoshi P and his team, and even the fact that the cash shop, I believe, is actually run by somebody else in Yoshi P, like there's separation, which is actually kind of intelligent in my mind because it is this other department, but it has that, that friction doesn't become too overbearing. I think the problem what we saw with the drama with Cruise Chaser specifically is it was data mined, and then people had the expectation that it was tied behind either an achievement or some form of content or something like that. And so misaligned expectations because of data mining. This is where Chris and I have actually talked about this specific thing, that data mining can be a big concern because you don't really know, because it could be just something they're testing. You don't really know. And when people start to say, oh yeah, this was found, this is how it's going to be, we see that all the time, and I can't change human nature. So yeah, it's like, okay. Now Melissa says, I see a lot of people talking about we pay for the sub and we should get insert item with our sub. That was kind of the idea because of the veteran rewards. I wish they'd bring those back. Would there have been a better way, like to have these kind of mounts? I believe in a hybrid system in which like you tie in some form of RNG rare, meaning like, I wouldn't care if like in the course of 5 years, only like 5 cruise chasers had ever dropped from random, treasure chest out of all of the population playing. Like I don't mind it being ultra rare, but at the end of the day, like I still wish that for me that there was a connection. If you're going to have the option to pay for something, it would still be exciting if there was a way within the game that can come in. People feel like that cheapens the achievement. And that's why I say 100% RNG, because there's no achievement that you do to get it. It's literally, congratulations, you got this mount. What do you think about that idea?
I think that's a viable idea. I wouldn't try to connect it with the store in a way, because if you can get something in the store and it's also in the game, like maybe there's a version in the game that is really bright and it glows and it's golden, and then in the store they have like a crappy silver version, then you can get the crappy silver version in the store, while the better version in the RNG box can be rewarded to you in game. And if you want it even better, one that has dynamo wings, you have to do a really hard content to get it. So that's probably me just thinking.
No, you're thinking right.
I'm thinking, no, I'm going back to, I don't know if it's old way of thinking, but I want to be rewarded for my time playing the game because I'm paying my sub to play the game. And I put all in this work to get this really just good looking mount. Whereas you can just go in a cash shop and just buy it.
Well, and Zoila kind of highlights that point, talking about the fact that it's also a raid boss, something that really kind of a lot of people connect to, struggle to fight, especially in Savage, as opposed to something that's a little bit more out of place, right? A giant flying whale, unless they start adding those as like, enemies and bosses and things that become iconic, it is that there is a juxtaposition there in my mind. And I do definitely see that argument that people are making. Do you want to know my theory, or at least what I would like to see the evolution of the cash shop be? My personal issue, like with it at its core, is the instant satisfaction, the instant gratification. Swipe credit card, get X. In that regards, I would like to see, and this is just my theory, I'm sure that you could poke a lot of holes in it. I'm sure it has a lot of problems that people could easily, kind of say like, that's Brian, you wouldn't want that. I would see, like, if you're gonna have a cash shop, that there should be some kind of quest behind it, right? Okay, you bought the Cruise Chaser, mount. Well, guess what? Like, now that you have it, like, to get it is to do this and do this and do this. So it's essentially where you're kind of, in a way, more or less, you're buying them out, but there isn't that sense of instant gratification. You actually get a quest that essentially that unlocks that mount that you can then take on. Yes, I know there are drawbacks, but that's where, like, just speaking for myself, the instant gratification of just how easy it is to swipe credit card, get X, is where I draw the line. I don't let my kids play games like that. Like, it's like it is where, like, okay, I have no issue if you want to support the game and you want, like, in that 9%, it's your money. I'm not here to tell you how to spend it. You do you. I'm not your parent. But when it comes to, like, my actual kids where I am their parent, it's like, no, like let's figure out what the value of that is, what your time is worth, and etc. Because it becomes better. Like I asked this question on live stream: are these mounts flex? And everybody pretty much unanimously said no. Cash mounts aren't flex because there are still even cooler things that you can get in game that are earned in that regards. And I go, I'd like to see it evolve into where cash shop stuff is something that is still earned. It is just unlocked through that level of support. And I think games where there isn't a subscription actually make more sense in that regards, because you aren't already paying every month. But in games where we see MMOs without subscriptions launching and buy to play modes, to where it's like, if there's like, hey, here's this quote unquote battle pass that literally has you work towards the rewards, just don't have the battle pass expire. Just don't put a time limit on that unlock. And I think essentially I have no issue with it.
How much would that quest or that, because say we're talking about the same amount. Let's say we're talking about how much would you think it should actually cost? Not $30, but something else.
What's the right price? The right price is always set by the market. Everybody will have somebody would easily pay $60 for that. Somebody will easily pay $10 for that. They've set the price in that regards, and they're going to sell a certain amount at that value. They'll put on sales, etc. So when it comes down to when people nickel and dime the price, all they're doing is thinking of them like where they fall in that regards. They're putting themselves as the market, but the market ultimately decides what the fair market value of the price is. And the fact that these typically have been running at these different categories tells me that Square Enix is perfectly fine with the price of it is as is.
Because I would say that I value the snap that I got from the cash shop way more than I got my Binu, the flying flaming bird that you can get as a mount in the cash shop. Now, that one was a gift, and I wholeheartedly took it. It's a flaming bird. I love it. But the snap was more emotional for me because it was Emmett Selk. And if you're far enough into the game without me spoiling, that snap means a lot to players, especially if you connected with the character. Mm-hmm. And if I bought that snap, but it was connected to a quest, and that quest was incredibly meaningful for it, I see what you mean. I know people can poke holes at it and may even say like, well, the cost of this and what's the meaning of that. But if I earned it in game and I bought it, and it's essentially I'm buying a quest, right? To get the reward. I think both you'll get an experience and you'll be rewarded for something that you have achieved. And I think that's actually fair. Now that I think about it, like I think I'd go with something like that.
And this is all rooted in my only concern with cash shops. The biggest concern is the instant gratification. Right. Because especially with credit cards, you never really feel that money, and so it just becomes easy of like, oh, I want that, and then all of a sudden you look at it and you're like, how the hell did I spend $300 on this game? People have already stated they've spent thousands and thousands, and that's fine. Like there was some kind of news story, some guy spent $15,000 on his game. I go, good for him. If he's got the money, it's his money. I don't care. It doesn't actually impact me. Getting that mount doesn't hurt me. Doesn't make my game worse for it. It's the instant gratification of it. And Melissa, I only jumped in on your thought here because Melissa kind of says like, what would the difficulty be? So I would like to clarify kind of that thought is that I don't think it would be like some difficult, like only 1% of the 1% could ever complete it, because it'd have to be something that would be completable because you have also paid for it. I think it would just be a function of time. Like and it varies, right? Like maybe the mount would tell you before you purchase it, like what kind of quest you're looking at, but it could be like run 15 dungeons, do 15, fates, do, a couple of this, get this item from the market board or whatever. And it could be, ideally it should be something that's fun and engaging that maybe tells the story of this. Like you're building them out, you're working with these people, and here's what you've got to do to get that done. And then you get the reward. And it's A, you supporting the game, B, getting the amount itself, but then also not necessarily having that feel of swipe credit card, get results. And thus there's a little bit more of, I also did the quest, I supported the game, and then I also had something to do and order it. And that's just where I fall. Somebody might just think that I just said it's difficult. Obviously, like that's if we start nickel and diming, like what's the right fair amount of time per whatever, that becomes a difficult conversation to have in a community, because everybody's going to have different time availability and thinking how they would want that to be executed. Go ahead. Sorry, man, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you didn't cut me off.
I'm cutting you off right now.
But no, you bring up a point. I was also watching Mad Season Show, which part of my WoW quest here. He profusely hated the cash shop for WoW. And there were reasons for that. The instant gratification with swiping your card that's it. It's instant and it goes away. Whereas a reward that you've gotten and you've worked hard for, whether it's in game or, through the method that you said, Brian, I think that feeling and just that memory lasts longer. There's something meaningful in getting something that is rewarded to you rather than something that you just got because you spent cash on.
Mm-hmm. So I asked the question another way as well, because I was like, I wanted to kind of see what people fell into in the categories. Because when it comes to MTX, I see those as the three prominent categories: no, and yes. And that's essentially how that question was asked. So that was kind of where and the numbers kind of fell. So I asked the question in another way here. Somebody actually was probably like, I'd like to see a question about the cash shop that isn't directly related to 14, but I want to actually focus this piece of it on 14 specifically. How is 14's cash shop? It's perfectly balanced. It's a sub-based game, so it shouldn't have a cash shop. It gives me a way to get something fun and support 14. And I don't support cash shops, but they don't impact my play. And then additional comments. What stands out to you in terms of the results for the way this question is asked?
It gives me a way to get something fun and support 14. I see that as it's kind of surprising to me, honestly.
Yeah,
I'm honestly surprised about that. I'm a little taken aback by that, because I would think people would say I don't support the cash shop, but it doesn't impact 14 as much. I would think that would be a little bit more. In fact, this is something. I'm even more curious about the other. I don't even know what the others what they're talking about, but I guess that's the comments down there. Yeah.
Yeah, so I dislike cash shops in general, but for 14, I don't know why I said it like that. For sure. 14 shop actually feels more optional than other games. I personally don't use it, but it doesn't bother me that it exists. Cash shops and microtransactions are a blight on the industry in general. An argument can be made that free-to-play games need them, but I'd counter that VIP subs is a better model compared to others. 14 isn't bad, but the 14 is a sub-based game and shouldn't have one. I'd rather my sub went up $1 to have all the items put into the game proper and to see that the Mog Station burnt to the ground for everything but renames and Phantasias. Speaking of Phantasias, they're usually the number one thing that gets sold on the Mog Station. With that, how's that comment make you feel? I like it. I think it was well worded. Good. Boop.
I think I would love to see cash shops just to go away, but I still, if you
that's
want,
why I asked this question.
Yeah,
it's just not. Yeah. As much as we would want it, that's just divorced from reality. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would like them to go away. And yeah, I am spending $15 a month, essentially in a game that I've also paid for. Because would
you spend 16 if it got rid of it?
Well, I pay for 10. I'm a legacy member.
Yeah, me too. Suck on that.
I was there for the moon, guy.
I was there for Dal Moon. We're going back. Yeah, moon on moon. It started with the moon, ends with the moon.
Oh, weird, right? Yeah, I honestly want to see the cash up to go, but at the same time, they do pull up a point with the rename and the Fantasia, which you did say that it is very up there as being the most sold thing for, I would suspect, maybe PR or PR. But I would like, maybe there's another way for me to support 14. Maybe not in such, I don't know, because it's not like the shop window shows up in game. It's completely separate from the game. You go online, you go to a different website. It doesn't show up in people's faces. It shows up as kind of like an advert, kind of, when you open up the game loader. This is the reason why I said I was in the middle of the road in one of my streams, because it supports 14, but you're still paying the subscription, which essentially is like, you definitely need to have the servers to stay up. Servers need to stay up, so they need they need money. But at the same time, I would love to see fixes. I would love to see extra content. I would love to see Blitzball. I know, everybody has said this, but Blitzball is like one of my favorite things in Final Fantasy X, and I would love to see it in 14. If the money can go to that, great. However, I still have a visual hatred for money shops. I don't like them. I don't want them to be there.
Yeah, it becomes the challenge with any kind of, especially online game. They're here to stay, and that's why I wanted to ask that first poll, because it just shows you that, like, in order to get rid of them, you're going to have to convince basically 85% of gamers, to sit here and stop, doing that. Even if only 10% are still spending money, that 10% ends up being, financially, more viable, which is why it sucks. Because essentially, I think there's this mythos around video games that, like, they're fair in terms of monetization. I've seen people talk about how games are this equalizer, and I think games have this purpose in which that allows us to communicate using the language of video games, and it allows us to realize we're not all so different, right? It's like, oh, we all like games, like, great, okay, cool, So it kind of helps. It both helps and hurts tribalism at its core, and it just depends on how you use the platform. But when it comes down to the video games, though, I think there's this great mythos that video games have, they made it even playing field. I think consoles more than anything did, because you could, your Super Nintendo would work just as well as my Super Nintendo. You couldn't get an advantage of me in X game, etc. And that's when a lot of I think the gamers that are really frustrated by this grew up in that era. Nowadays, when you talk about PCs, it's like, yeah, there is still an unfair advantage. Somebody could have a better mouse or a better keyboard, better processor. And so gaming can start to feel like it's this constant money vacuum. And certain companies have definitely gone out of their way to, like, reiterate that fact. EA, Activision, which we were talking about earlier, like Ubisoft, even Nintendo. A lot of people give Nintendo a lot of passes when it comes down to it because of the nostalgia. And I like Nintendo. I sit down and play Nintendo every night with my kids. But when you look at how they handle their monetization and how they handle just their ownership and their digital rights, like, it is in and of itself, like, it's the most annoying and most ridiculous company out there, in my opinion, when it comes down to this stuff. But it's hard to have conversations around games and companies where people love them, because then they'll defend them and excuse them. And that's, I think, one of the things that make gaming culture truly unique in that regard. So that's why when it comes down to the cash shop and you talk about in 14, lots of people rise up to defend it because they feel like they're defending 14. And I don't care. Like, I'm that's why for me, like, I'm indifferent, because I'm not going to support it. I just wish it was different. I'm going to voice how I think it could be better. But I kind of just look at it and go, oh my gosh, like, you're talking about billions of dollars versus, like, I'm sorry that we lost your subscription, this small percentage of people, etc. So I do feel for the people who are really mad and frustrated at it. I'm just a math guy, and I'm like, well, we kind of lost that fight, guys. We kind of lost.
I kind of feel as though I think 14 and its cash up, it doesn't really offend me. It doesn't change the game and its economy. No, crafters do that. And I've said this in my video, but crafters ruin the economy for some servers. But it's not the cash shop that does it. There's nothing in the cash shop that ruins the game. And again, it's optional. It's not in your way.
You can get in-game money from the cash shop in Final Fantasy 14.
Yeah, wouldn't it be through the boosts though? Mm-hmm. The boost gives you armor and cash, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't. But it's not like one of your retainers has 99,999,000 gil, right? They don't just automatically give you that. They give you. I'm not sure how much they give you. Is it a couple hundred thousand?
What about the bike that goes faster than anything else before anybody else can do that?
That's not really game changing either. I mean,
Some people disagree.
People, I mean, how is that going to change much of?
So
Much
I'm
of
going to
anything?
be playing devil's advocate and arguing for something that I don't personally like adhere to, but this is what like so I'm not making Brian's argument. I'm making the argument that I see,
Mhm.
and it's that you can get to the zones faster, you get to the quest faster, you clear the quest faster, you level up faster, you level up your gathers faster, you get to the end game faster, you make more money, and you can establish market dominance for an entire expansion. So it's like it is if that is your goal, like that is an absolute requirement. I don't hold that same opinion, but I do understand it. Go ahead.
Mm. But then you got flying, and flying kind of takes that away, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah.
flying is all at the same
Well, if
speed.
you also look at how Shadowbringers did it as well, is that you can actually go and grind out your mount speed in the
Yeah,
zone by just going and farming up the primo. What did I call them? Pictogems. Regardless like the different fate stuff. So before you couldn't unlock the mount speed increase until you finished the story. But
yeah.
in Shadowbringers, when they introduced that, they made it to where like you can go grind that up for the zone, so you can get your mount boost speed in the zone and be comparable even before you have flying ton. So I honestly I was like, oh, good, they made that change. Then it really kind of defeats the point. But people do hold that view.
People, that's a fair view. That's a fair view. I would say that that's very viable. I say it doesn't change the landscape or the economy of the game only because it's not very drastic. So this is why I said that crafters ruin it more because they can set the price in the market board, and they can craft things as long as they have like the resources. They could trade on the market board if they have a guild. They have the resources right there. That's why I say that more they're more of the hindrance when it comes to something like that in the economy. But something in the cash shop, I don't think even the boost that gives you some little bit of money, and I think it gives you armor. I've never gotten a boost in my life, so I can vouch for that. I've never boosted. I've also never did any time skip or nothing like that. uh, I don't see anything in the cash shop really changing the game and how the game works. There isn't anything much dangerous in it. So, to give you an example, and against that, think Black Desert. I don't know if you heard this, Brian, but somebody
Yeah, I've heard of
spent
Black
like
Desert.
$250,000 in Black Desert just so that he would be at the top of the game. And he's, something called like a whale.
Yeah,
And he
that's why I
spent
think the lunar whale mount is so like fitting. We're whaling, boys. We're whaling.
we're whaling, and yet that thing is only a two-seater. I see 4 seats on that thing. I don't understand why it's a two-seater. But
Well, I'm
this
talking about the lunar whale, the new one that's 8-seater.
oh no.
Yeah,
Yeah, the lunar whale and 8-seater is fine. The other whale, the big whale with the two-seater on it,
yeah.
has 4 seats on it. And you can't use them. There's only 2 seats
I
on
was
them.
wondering if it was going to be a 4-seater, and then they were like, "Oh, we should move this back to 2 because they didn't have a 4-seater yet in the game."
Yeah, I'm thinking they'll change that maybe.
I wonder if they would. Yeah,
Um, but yeah, Black Desert is very egregious with its cash shop, with everything in it, with its boost, with its equipment that you can buy, with its gold you can get off the cash shop. It changed the landscape for Black Desert, and people have gotten annoyed, and only those with money really stands at the top of it. And that's kind of like the extremes of the games in terms of like an MMO. And I
yeah.
don't see that in 14 through the cash shop. Nothing from the cash shop affected me or anybody that I've known. Uh, as far as the bike, it does make you faster, but it hasn't really changed. Like getting to places faster, I think benefits the player. And my God, I know we're going to get to this soon, but the boosts, um, it only affects the person who's using the boost. But I will always say that I feel bad for them when they use the boost and not go through the game kind of what it's intended to be. Lest I bring up Quinn, but but, but we'll say that nothing has affected me personally. If somebody else bought something on the store, um, not majorly, but the boost is a different story. Then that would seem kind of like going against what I'm saying. But there are reasons. There are reasons why the boost has to be talked about.
So let's go ahead and slightly transition into that, because boosts are, I think, a part of the conversation we're about to have. You tweeted out a question from my 14 peeps. How does everyone feel about the level syncing nowadays? Does the loss of abilities still bother players? Yes or no? And you tweeted this out. I thought it was a great question because it ended up kicking off a really good discussion. You can kind of see that here. Lots of replies. I thought it was just a really good question because it's something that I've longed for in the game itself. So let's dive into that. What was the source of you in this question? Why make this tweet? Why ask this question?
It's been about 6 or 7 years since anybody talked about level syncing. And I was playing World of Warcraft. And when you go back and you do something called I think it was like time walking, you keep your abilities.
Mm-hmm.
And you basically just plow through a dungeon. You just wreck it and go on through. And I brought that question up to friends. I've brought that question up to my Discord. I finally asked Twitter when I got the courage to do so. And yeah, as you said, it brought up a conversation. There are people who want the ability to keep their full kit when they level sync. And there are those who say that they don't. I'm still in the middle of the road on that one because there are good and bad things that can happen when you keep your full kit. And Final Fantasy in itself, Yoshi P, I think they had a reason why they had to make it that way. And nobody had talked about it for a long time. I thought maybe I could just bring it up. It was on my mind for a whole weekend. Mm-hmm. I had to ask.
So we talked about this, and obviously we went into it because I am of the belief, and I at the point where I don't run level synced content if I can at all avoid it. And so we ended up getting into the nice little thread here, talking about it. Essentially, like yes or no. So I'd love to know. Feel free, chat, if you want to weigh in. Would you like to be able to run level sync content and keep your full kit once you've unlocked it? My theory would be is to have it nerfed. Yes, you'll have skills before they were intended to do that content, but we have that already. When Shadowbringers came out, we were running old content and just mowing through it like butter. Like it was unreal just how fast things went down. And now when I go and play the game, like I don't want to run old content because I want to keep my skills. I want to keep those abilities, and they've pruned some of them from the earlier game. So the earlier game does feel a little bit slower. So I would love to see ultimately this happen, but players are concerned. Christian in this case was talking about his concern was like it would just completely break the older game and make it intimidating for new players. Did you see that those replies at all? And what do you think about that?
Yeah, I was watching. You guys
from your tower, like I see this. Let's see what the internet does.
I was sitting on my throne of swords while I was watching and placing judgment. You guys brought up good points, and it spread from just people actually messaging me saying their own opinion on my Discord as well. You guys brought good points. One, I think Christian was talking about how if they saw somebody just plowing through the dungeon with their full kit, it would ruin their experience. But then I think someone who echoed what you said, that it would be great and exhilarating because I want to be able to do my full rotation. We could be scaled down. Everything will be at a level potency, so it wouldn't really change anything of me going and level syncing that way. And I'm still stuck in the middle. You guys, I honestly think the conversation isn't even over. You guys had a very good debate. I'm not going to say argument. Debate. It was
argument's a fine word, but people believe that argument is like it has negative connotation when I don't hold that. An argument is just somebody making a point, building out a case for something in that regards. That's how I view it. It's like, not like like your parents are the parents are having a disagreement.
I'm glad that's your definition. Unfortunately, argument, my definition always been yelling, but you guys had a conversation that was very intriguing for me to watch, because I was looking at Christian and what he was saying, and I'm like, wait, what if you did bring down everyone's potency, right? Like say that if you were a samurai and you don't have like the loss of your abilities, but you're all potency down. What would be the difference? I'm thinking maybe the potency of your attacks will be at a static 100 or 150. Maybe the OGCDs that you get to do, because you'll have your full kit. You'll be able to utilize everything you have. You can still empower yourself, but it won't empower you too much. But then I was thinking, what if all that still makes you overpowered? And rather than experiencing something as a new player, you're just watching this guy thrash the dungeon while they're just literally ball and chain and just dragging you along, saying, "Let's go, buddy, we're going. All right, we're making it to the next boss."
But my counter is that already happens. Like that is what happens. People pull wall to wall, chain pull, do these things because how of the current level syncing system works together.
It was really bad. Yeah, it was really bad. No, you're right, because it was really bad with main scenario quests. Remember before they locked the cutscenes and new players came in, they were watching the cutscene and the dungeon was over.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt for a long time, I was just like, I just want to get my experience and get the heck out. Now I understand. New players deserve their experience. So yeah, that's definitely not as bad now, but there are new players that do get dragged throughout the dungeon, but I don't think it's as bad. I think it's just...
I still think the new player would literally have, and they would unlock new skills, and then they would get to play with those skills and still then be incentivized to run older content with their newer kit. I just kind of look at it as, since we don't have gear lust in this game, that it would be more a connection of like, oh, wow, that's a really cool skill. Like that looks really flashy and interesting. And then mathematically, like how I would handle it is like, I would go look at what's the theory cap of damage, and then just say, okay, if this is the ceiling, then you make sure that like from a potency and an adjustment of the output is that it doesn't break that ceiling. So you would literally kind of implement a soft damage cap on anybody, so that no matter what they're doing, they could still be practicing their rotations, but you wouldn't actually be increasing the total amount of damage that would be output in a dungeon by any one particular player. Even if you're not, oh, I've got AoEs now, great. Like we're just going to cut that damage, because we know that for this dungeon, I know this is work, but I'm just saying, like, all in all, like it is mathematically possible to solve that problem and essentially appease both people, in my opinion, unless somebody thought that the new player experience would be ruined by seeing people do, high level moves.
That's kind of an opinion for somebody. Like if I honestly saw somebody doing a cool move that I don't have yet, I honestly would probably be encouraged to push that job that they're playing, or get farther into my level to see what I have in terms of my kit. The problem, though, I would see, you would have to really run the numbers in terms of like what would be your cap potency, and what about the utility? What about the OGCDs that you're also able to do? Like for a healer, for a white mage especially, they have too much in their kit to just be nigh invincible at lower level dungeons, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, you just OGCD the heals. Again, like the heals in themselves would be like it would still, you'd look at the theoretical like cap, the ceiling of those heals. So if you're like, okay, given that like this dungeon at its current value, you can heal up to, what would be like 300 a second, or actually that's probably way too high for like a level 17. But you're like, okay, 50 a second. So then anything going out could not theoretically go higher than that cap. Yeah, you could put a regen on somebody. That's great, but that regen's maybe healing 1 HP, a tick, in that regard. So it's like, it would literally just be like, here's the ceiling, and no number can go past it. Doesn't matter what you're doing. So you could literally still, do your one button skill spam. I think that's more damaging to the new player experience. And that's just where I fall. It's not just like my preference. I think the new player experience needs more OGCDs, needs more skills brought in earlier. And I think a part of that ends up being tied into that we'll have to wait and see if they do any more controller work, because I'd like to see more skills evolve, more OGCDs brought in within the first 15 levels, just to make combat a little bit more happy. That's just me.
Yeah, no, because like I said, I'm still in the middle of the road with that one. Because when you said that, I'm thinking, if you kept the the potency of the person who's coming down from level sinking. They have the same cure as what another white mage would have if they were there, but then their other moves, how much do they need to nerf that in order to be fair for lower level dungeons? So it comes to the numbers games again. However, while speaking on that, I would love to be able to just do my full rotation at lower level dungeons. And I don't know if anybody else cares about that, would be the other thing, because that would be my strictly my opinion. And I honestly don't know if it really harms anyone to have their full level kit, as long as the potency. See, now you're gearing me on one side. Is this what you wanted? This is what you wanted me to lean on the side, didn't you? Didn't you?
You do whatever you want, man. Like
you wanted me to lean on the side. I see the plot now, but it would be cool to have your full kit. But at the same time, I want the new player experience. I want the new players to experience the game like they're picking up something and they're seeing it and not getting ruined, like anything ruined for them. I want
I agree with that.
Yeah, I don't want a dungeon to be like done, or they're trying to go through a raid boss or their first boss. I forgot the name of that raid boss. It was so long ago. The easiest 8-man I've ever seen, and I forgot it. But what if that was even faster than it was before?
I just think that regardless, that even in the next expansion, it's going to be curious to see with the stat squish, if there is any kind of feeling in that regards, or if it still feels like it's even faster now, just faster in that regards. Now, Aaron even weighs in on this saying, here's where I think the differences are. The newer jobs that came after Heaven's Word and going back into doing AR content, they are completely OP. And I agree with that 1,000%.
Yeah.
And so it's like, that's where the argument for protecting the new player experience for me breaks down, is that what experience are you protecting? Or are you just not seeing that it is the system as it exists now is already doing that. And then it de-incentivizes players from running that content because it doesn't have that. I guess that's one way to break it down. It's like, well, you don't have the skills. I guess you're not going to go run that content, because like at the end of the day, like when it comes down to it, if I don't need that leveling roulette, which by the time I'm already a couple of weeks or a month into the expansion, I typically don't, and so I just find myself as one less person in that content, and we have such a wealth of content. And then I guess that the way to kind of then ask the question differently to get a different side of the opinion of chat and you in this regards, if not ARR, and say you keep that the way it is, would there be an expansion where you'd be okay with that experience changing? Would you be okay with Heaven's Word letting you have all your skills as we go into the level 90 and that gap being even wider? Or is it Stormblood, or is it something where you'd be like, well, it's fine in Shadowbringers, you can have your skills in that regards? That would feel kind of fun. Like, is there a certain expansion where that, if you're on the hard no, like, is there an expansion or a point in time where that tips to a yes? I'd just generally be curious.
If I had the option, I would say stick with, if any, if we can keep our full kit from Heaven's Word up, because I think like the 1 to 50 experience it's kind of sacred. I see it kind of sacred because it's somebody's first time playing the game. You don't want to ruin it for them. So when they reach Heaven's Word, now they're seeing like all the extra stuff that they can get into, and that might be a surprise for them. And I don't think it would actually break much, because as our commenter said before, Dark Knight would have it really did. It would have just broken the lower level dungeons.
Red Mage, Astrologian, Red Mage, Samurai, like it just goes in and it's like, all right, we're done.
Gunbreaker, can you think about Gunbreaker being back there and just breaking the dungeon wholeheartedly? It's already the top DPS in terms of like tanking, so yeah, I can definitely see where they're coming from with that. But my thing on the top of my head, and probably the most important, is the new player experience, and hopefully it doesn't ruin it for any of them. Yeah,
that would be the travesty. Is like, hey, we've done this, and all of a sudden, if dungeons became like a 3-minute clear, and you're like, oh, you're hoping to experience it, I just think that what would be another like hook to get people excited, like, whoa, like I'm also playing Summoner and this one's bringing out Bahamut and we're just in Sistad. How do you get Bahamut? Oh, you're gonna like you'll unlock it at this point in this, in the game. Oh man, I can't wait to get that point. But like my argument is hinged on like looking at a damage and healing ceiling. Somebody in chat was like, oh, if they had benediction, that would break it. Not really. Again, you look at that healing ceiling and saying, well, they didn't have benediction at this. The maximum they could heal at any one given time would be, 200 HP. And so your Benny wouldn't do, more than that in that regards. And then it'd still be on cooldown because that's that ceiling cap. That's the only way I think you could justify it in terms of old content. You would literally just look at the numbers as they exist now. And you would say, what was the ceiling cap per character? And you could factor in for the time. And it's, it's just a math equation in my mind. Then all of a sudden it opens up, allows players to practice their rotations. It allows a high level player to go in and mentor a low level player. And at the same time, kind of show off. But, everybody's obviously welcome to their own opinion.
Yeah, you would have the plus of like showing something cool to somebody, but there's also the negative. Benny, if we turn it into something else, it wouldn't be Benny anymore. It would be something else. It would be pseudo Benny. It would be semi Benny, and fair enough if they changed the ability so it'd be that way. But then it wouldn't be Benny, and they can't use it as Benny. It would be an extra healing ability. Yeah. And I've actually, now that I remember, I've actually talked about this with somebody who was coming from another game. If I think there was something similar in terms of having a full kit and being able to go back in dungeons. There was a kind of like a negative thought that they had. And I don't know if I should worry about the same, but they said that in this particular game, some people got kicked out of a dungeon because they didn't have the full kit yet while they were in that dungeon. And that's toxicity that you don't want. And
now hopefully that stuff gets reported and those people get those wonderful little suspensions. Like so it's because like my wife was bullied and she's like because her gear wasn't perfect because we've already seen it and it doesn't exist today. It's like she came in with the gear requirement like higher than the gear requirement for the dungeon, and the healer literally refused to do anything because she wasn't in like whatever the sync cap for the gear for that dungeon was, and we still cleared it because guess what, his fairy disobeyed and like because it was a scholar and it was like, all right, we're gonna clear it. We could have cleared it much faster if that guy got off his butt, but he wanted us to kick him, and I was like, no, I'm not gonna kick you, I'm just gonna clear this content with or without you because we're fine, like we're absolutely fine. I don't know what your this elite attitude is. So yeah, I have a problem with some people.
It's a shame. I've actually had some sort of experience with that. So when Realm Reborn was just a thing, I actually went in as a paladin, and there was this one little Tartar who kept doing this ellipses at me constantly because of how I played my tank. Even with full kit, he kept ellipsing at me, and then eventually at the end of the dungeon, he said, "I will never let you be a tank for me ever again." Get blocked and left. And funny enough, I met his wife in the same exact dungeon, in the same exact scenario. And I had to check if I was like, wait, what? I checked and she says she supports her husband in everything she does. I was like, uh-oh. Okay, so I see what this is what's going on. They're just there are a couple that does this. There's gonna be people like that all the time. And it's a shame. It's a shame to see. I have more hope. Listen, I have hope for the community for Final Fantasy. I think we are a very nice community, especially if you go into their different sects. PR, crafter, even rating, which I did say on a Twitter before, negativity is not the right thing to do.
No.
Not at all. And that's what I'm afraid of. The negativity to just spread out and go crazy.
So Sync, where can people find you? What kind of stuff you got planned and what you're working on?
Well, you can find me on YouTube, Sync Weaver, same name. You could also find me on Twitch, Sync Weaver, all lower cases, because someone took the caps off my name somehow. Okay.
All right.
And I do stream every Tuesday, every Friday, and Thursday. And my plan is to finish this WoW video. I'm still not done.
Well, your last several videos I've been really enjoying. So thank you very much for putting your spin and your content. And honestly, I think you have a very joyful personality when it comes to the content. And I like your sense of humor. So I really appreciate the work that you've been putting out, guys. Be sure to check out his links in the description. If you're watching live with us over on Work to Game, also the link is going to take you to Ginger Gaming Radio for the podcast itself. Be sure to subscribe over there because in September, we're going to be moving the full live stream and all that 100% over on Ginger Gaming Radio. So thanks everybody also for the 14 likes over on Ginger Gaming Radio and also for the financial support of supporting the show in this regard. So we appreciate it. I couldn't do it without you guys. So that's going to wrap it up, guys. This has been the Crystal Core Radio Podcast, episode 85. My name is Brian, and you're been whatever's, and I'm looking for the thing. And yeah, there it is. I was like, where did it go? I can't find it. Guys, this has been the Crystal Core episode 85. I hope you enjoyed the discussion. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for being awesome, and we'll see you on our next podcast. But until then, take care.